So, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. Today, we're going to focus on one simple idea, that content freshness when it comes to product information, product copy, is now a competitive advantage, not just for Google, but for AI search in general across LLMs. And this doesn't just mean blogs. So it means the pages that actually drive the vast majority of a retailer's revenue. So product pages, category pages, and the metadata that sits behind them. So you'll leave hopefully for the next 20 minutes with a playbook you can apply immediately, whether you've got 50 SKUs or 500,000. But first of all, if we just start with the bigger picture, what does it take to win in e-commerce search in 2026? So if we look across search experience optimization, answer engine optimization, and generative engine optimization, you can see there's no silver bullet. It's a jigsaw pieces that need to come together. So the first is search engine experience optimization. So this is the new SEO, a combination of UX and SEO. So it's the full journey from search to click to product page to checkout. So speed, mobile UX, clarity, trust, friction reduction, all of that impacts whether the traffic that you gain actually goes on to convert. Next up, we've got answer engine optimization. So this is about how do we make sure your pages are chosen in AI answers, shopping modules, and featured snippets. So AI is always looking for content that's clean, quotable, and structured. So each sentence needs to work as a standalone. And then third, we've got generative engine optimization, very, very similar, but broader. So this is about actually being recommended by AI tools, such as ChatGPT. So you win here with authoritative content. So use cases, outcomes, proof, content that matches conversational prompts. And so the common thread though across all three of these is that you need to refresh your content to stay on top. And that's a really, really big problem today for most e-commerce teams, because it feels impossible to keep on top of updating and pushing out new products, new content regularly. But at the same time, it's critical to doing so. So first of all, we'll start with why is it critical? What's the business case you need to build within your organization for why this matters? And then where do you start? So content decay is real. It's one of the most under-discussed growth leaks in e-commerce. So even if your page was great when you published it, it's not going to stay great forever. So in general, content has got an average lifespan of about 1 year, 9 months before there's a significant traffic decline. But in e-commerce, it's much faster than that. And we've been seeing this with client testing and research as well. And so in electronics, we're seeing the product page decline after 4 to 6 months. In fashion product pages faster, 3 to 6 months. And why is that? Well, it's because shoppers' expectations change, competitors update, search terms change, and AI systems increasingly reward what's relevant. So if you're sat on the other end of this webinar and your product catalog content hasn't been updated in the last 6 to 12 months, it's highly likely that you're leaving revenue on the table. And the decline tends to follow a predictable pattern that we can look at on the next slide. So this is a typical content lifecycle for products. You launch the new product with content, it gains traction, it grows, it peaks, and then we enter the period of decline. And there's a downward spiral because Google uses click-through rate when it's constantly re-ranking your products and their content. So then when you get into this spiral of lower clicks, that will lead to weaker performance signals, and ranking will continue to drop. So it's a vicious spiral if that content's not been refreshed and the click-through rate isn't continuing the upward trajectory. And a page can also be indexed in Google, but still not show up in AI answers until it is clearly authoritative, well-structured, and referenced enough to be worth citing. So early LLM visibility is often quite spiky, and it's actually less predictable than traditional SEO. On the flip side, Google and AI search across the board reward freshness, especially in e-commerce. So on Google, the uplift's easily measurable. So regular refreshers with time-sensitive keywords can drive 47% higher click-through rates that we've seen consistently. Updated pages across clients can see 31% longer session durations, meaning people are finding what they need more, and hence they're dwelling further and they're adding more to their basket. And if you're able to update your content every 90 to 120 days, you actually can maintain ranking around 4.2 positions higher than an otherwise static page. So if you're thinking internally, and it's the conversation with the finance team and leadership of, is it worth the effort? The answer is yes. It's one of the highest leverage SEO activities you can do, is that regular refresh of product content and metadata. And it might sound surprising, but AI search actually rewards freshness even more than traditional Google in here. So what we've got are just some example keywords, just to bring this to life. And clearly there'll be people in other verticals on the call or who's seeing this later, but you can see that a lot of these things, they've got a time horizon. You wouldn't want these always within the product copy and within the metadata, but they can make a massive difference for the 2, 3, 4 months that they're live, for making sure that you're winning competitors versus competition. So this is just a small number, just to bring to life what that could look like. And then AI search being even fresher. So ChatGPT tends to cite pages that are even newer than the average organic Google result. And when AI tools recommend products, they often order citations from newest to oldest in their horizon. So that means freshness becomes a critical ranking and recommendation factor. So if your PDPs and PLPs haven't been updated recently, AI may very likely be simply ignoring them. But when you refresh product and category pages with geo and AEO elements baked in, you can boost that visibility by up to 40%. So there's a huge visibility of being a first mover in this space, because the vast majority of people are still just getting products live, out the door, making money, and the content at that point then doesn't change for as long as the SKU is stocked on the site, giving a massive advantage to people who are actually refreshing regularly in line with seasonality and trends. So what's the playbook? I think the biggest thing that we pride ourselves on at Ocular is just being really practical. Our job is to get our clients more traffic and revenue. And actually, we hope with these webinars that it's really practical. So what does this look like? You don't need to publish endless new content every single day. So you need a refresh system, though, within the e-commerce team and the product management team. So with regular refreshes, we can absolutely overcome that decay and see huge kind of 40% increase in growth in organic traffic. So we're going to break this down into 5 sections. How do you detect decay? Moments when you should refresh that are beyond just the typical traffic drops. What you should focus on refreshing first, category versus product pages. Why metadata and meta descriptions matter more than you probably realize. And then how do we measure this to make sure that we're adding value to the business through these refreshes? So how to detect decay. Decay isn't always obvious at first, especially if you're only watching traffic, because that can occasionally be a bit of a lag indicator. But we recommend looking at a holistic range of signals. So of course, watching traffic is very much going to be at the center of it. So if you're seeing a sustained 20 to 30% drop in organic clicks, that is an absolute red light to say we need to refresh our content. But you can also look at things like backlink loss or stagnation, or keyword coverage shrinking. So if people stop referencing your page, it's a sign that it's losing relevancy and authority in the eyes of industry bloggers, AI recommendations. So if your page used to rank for 200 keywords and now there's 120 that it's ranking for, you can surmise that your relevance is slipping for that page. But you can also look for things like bounce rate. So is that rising? Is time on page dropping? Again, that's starting to indicate that the page and the content is no longer matching what shoppers are expecting. And then lastly, make sure you pay attention to competitors' pages. If they're starting to leapfrog you in the Google rankings, that's one of the clearest signs that we see that you need to improve the pages and stop being static with the content. But content decay then isn't the only time to refresh. There might be other things that will allow you to capture upside as well. So even if traffic hasn't dropped, so it might be plateauing, it might stay the same, as a general rule, we need to create a cadence within a retail organization of the product catalog, all of the content for those pages, updating every 3 to 6 months. And the smarter approach, though, is to actually time it around high intent moments. So for e-commerce, freshness is generally going to be seasonal. So again, UK versus US, we're thinking Thanksgiving, we're thinking Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas, New Year. The value proposition's changing also as well behind the scenes. So you might have changed your delivery deadlines, you might have new gift bundles, you might have limited editions. All of those things mean that that should be referenced within the product copy and within the product metadata to make sure that we're ranking well and matching seasonal search terms in that, and making sure that we refresh it well ahead of peak, so that actually we allow the time for the pages to be indexed, for the AI engines to actually understand the content and to start to gain trust in them, so that we're set up for success, with the likes of spring season, etc., coming up in that. So let's show some practical examples of what does this look like in practice. So we used our AI copywriter to generate 2 descriptions for the same SKU. The first description you're seeing on screen here is optimized for winter. The second one will be for summer. So a subtle change, but can make a massive difference if we want to maintain the traffic for this product. So the winter outcome is basically, how do we make sure that the coffee's staying hot on the commute to work and isn't leaking? So the winter optimized description is naturally pulling in seasonal context. Cold mornings, commuting, warm drinks, insulation performance, ensuring it feels natural, uses the same language and phrasing the user might use, and matching use cases, at the same time not feeling keyword stuffed, still reading beautifully for the human that's going to land on this page when searching for it. So this is exactly what AI search is looking for. And let's look at the same product now for summer. So you can see this is again what our agent generated that's going to be appropriate. Same product, different season, and the intent shifted. They're now looking for cold coffee. They're looking for all-day cooling, but they're still looking for the leak-proof element. So the copy can then start to include different use cases: beach days, outdoor picnics, summer travels, iced drinks. Again, the product's the same. Hasn't just rewritten it for the sake of it. It's matching it to where are we meeting our consumers and how are they going to be searching on the likes of ChatGPT and Gemini. So seasonality is one of the easiest, most obvious ways to making sure that product content is relevant and we're maintaining traffic. So where do we focus? First priority, product detail pages. These are the money pages. If you've only got bandwidth to refresh one type of page, product pages is the most competitive. And in more detail, you want to make them clear, specific, useful, seasonal or trending use case and keywords built in. So we want to make sure that titles, descriptions, specs are localized. So for example, in this context, local means we're going to make sure that the content and copy is adapted for the local scenario. So that could be the customer region, so they feel native and are searchable locally. So if you have an international site, this isn't just about translating, it's about making sure that the use cases and the keywords in the local geography are being reflected in that seasonally relevant content. And even small things like making sure that British English versus US English is being adhered to makes a big difference for AI search visibility. And then making sure that you revise the meta descriptions on the back of each one of your product pages to match current promotions and value propositions. And also just encourage reviews, because we know that reviews count as fresh, keyword-rich content, and AI search engines love user-generated content. So there's absolutely still a place and a need for ongoing reviews constantly updated. Second priority would then be category pages. So in 2026, they need to actually start including editorial value, buying guides, seasonal edits, social proof modules, comparison sections. So structurally, you're looking to prioritize subcategories, filters, product grouping. So the updates could include adding new products, downplaying older listings, updating the category copy to reflect trends and seasonal demand. So actually some of the most powerful PLPs that the agent generates is where you're describing the ever-changing list of products, the benefits of them, how's the range evolving. All of that's really important, so they don't just simply become category listing pages. They've got rich content and metadata behind them as well. And again, best practice is 90 to 120 days, making sure this is up to date. So a little less regularly than the most competitive PDPs, but still being refreshed. And lastly, just to zoom in on meta descriptions. All too often, the metadata is just a replica of the on-product page copy, and that's just such a lost opportunity in AI search and SEO in general. So they aren't a direct ranking factor, but they're a massive click-through rate lever. So meta descriptions usually lift click-through rate when they're well optimized by about 5 to 6%, and mobile can be even much higher, 15 to 30%. And when it's done really well, that's going to translate to about a 4% increase in total organic sessions month on month. But here's the bigger issue to be aware of. Google will rewrite your meta descriptions over 60% of the time if they're not matching the intent. So if your meta copy is outdated, generic, or irrelevant, you're going to lose control of your brand message in all of that search results. So actually not doing it isn't just the case that you'll get your branded copy reflected in that. It simply means that you lose the power. Like you move it over to the search engine such as Google. So fresh meta copy, constantly updated, is one of the fastest refresh wins. And it's going to be essential if you want to keep owning your brand tone of voice within that critical area of product pages and PLPs. So here are just some best practices for meta refreshes. So think of your meta description like ad copy. So it needs to answer, why click this result instead of others? So highlight current promotions, sales, free shipping, bundles, any update on when the offers might expire to get that time sensitivity in there as well. Include high traffic keywords naturally throughout the metadata copy, and make sure that every page is unique. Do not duplicate meta copy because it will look unhelpful or irrelevant for machines reading it. Aim for 120 to 160 characters. Desktop top can generally show about 158, mobile often about 120. So make sure you're front loading the value. The proposition, the buy now incentive, make sure is right up top in there. Doing that manually across hundreds or thousands of SKUs is incredibly painful. And I don't think anyone on this webinar would want them or their team members doing that. So if you need a fast way to do that, our AI platform can generate all of the meta copy as well as the on-page product content as well. Now you've refreshed the copy. Clearly you want to make sure it's working. So measurement is clearly what's going to turn a content refresh program into a repeatable growth program. So you need to track organic traffic trends by category, click-through rate in your search console, rankings for your target keywords, AI overview appearances. This is still quite manual for most teams, but is increasingly important. Conversion rate improvements from updated pages. And here's the best approach. Run a simple test. Compare refreshed pages against a control group of lookalike pages within the same category that you chose not to refresh. Measure the difference in traffic and revenue in Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics, and that's your business case. That's the business case of the uplift you're going to see in pound or dollar terms. That is why you're putting the effort into actually making sure that you're doing these regular refreshes. So look, hopefully that was a helpful webinar. In terms of quick context on why we're talking about this, firstly, no one has all the answers. LLMs don't publish the exact playbook, and I said this on the first webinar of how you get found and purchased by them. But that's because getting found on AI search is complex and multidimensional. And OpenAI doesn't know exactly themselves. So if anyone says they will get you to the top of ChatGPT, run a mile. At Ocular, though, we're pouring all of our time and effort into R&D to making sure that all of that emerging evidence and all of the evidence we've got from over 100 clients and what's working with content refreshers and keywords and use cases is benefiting the whole, to make sure that people can win in this really competitive place where scale and speed matters. So look, thank you so much for joining. If you take one thing away from today, freshness is now a ranking signal and a recommendation signal. Fresh content gets you found on AI search as well as Google. So don't just create product content once. Think about how you're going to maintain it and refresh it and keep winning. So if you've got any questions or you'd like a demo, please just drop us a note, LinkedIn or an email. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks, everybody.